Okay, one of our beach chairs had the fabric on the seat ripped out. This is the one, and I was sitting in it the other day, and it ripped on me, and so we've decided to try to refurbish it. So this is the chair here, and I've been taking it apart. So I'll use this chair to explain what I did. On this side, you've got a hex bolt, and then on the other side underneath, there's a nut. Okay, there it is. So I put some WD-40 on there, and I just loosened the nut on that side, and I loosened the nut on this side. And when you do that, then this whole thing will just slide right off. And so we're in the process of using that as a pattern, and we've got some outdoor material that's UV resistant. So the next step that I'm working on right now is to get this piece of material off the back to use as a pattern. We're also going to try to do something with the wooden arms here. So the next thing I did was to take these wooden arms off, and I don't know if you can see, but underneath they have that square head bolt, so you need that's special bit. So there's 3 on this handle, and you just move the chair, just open it up or close it to get access to that 3rd one. Over here there's 5, because there's 3 inside that handle, and then there's 2, one on each side for this cup holder. And then there's also these 2. So once you get the wooden part off, you're left with this piece, and it's just riveted on. So I just took a drill bit. Okay, you can see it from this side. Just take a drill bit that is the size of the edge of the rivet. I think it was probably an 1/8 of an inch bit or a little bit bigger. And once you drill out the edge of the rivet, that whole thing comes apart. Once it comes apart, then you can remove this plate too. Then at the top of the back, you have a screw here on each side that's holding the material on. So I've taken that out on this one down here. And I thought once I got all that loose, I could just pull this material off the top, but because it's sewed right here, this is in the way. So what I'm going to have to do now is take out this bolt. And you can see it here on the chair. I haven't taken it apart yet. So I'll just put some WD-40 on that and use the hex socket on that. And hopefully I can get this thing back together. Okay, I've just sprayed that nut with some WD-40. And I wanted to show you the tools that have come in real handy for me. This is a 100-piece bit set that I just got at Northern Tools. I use it all the time. And then this is a color-coded 1/4 inch drive metric. I really like it because it's color-coded, but it's real old. Got it quite a while ago at Harbor Freight. I was by there the other day, and the price of their tools has just skyrocketed, but I use these 2 things all the time. I also invested in a very tiny, got this at Harbor Freight too, it's a very tiny swivel 1/4 inch ratchet. So anyway, that's the little bit that's going to help me here. Okay, I got this bolt loose. This here had a strap so you could carry the chair over your shoulder. I'm not sure if we still need that, but I'm going to slowly pull up this bolt. Okay, so I got that out. Okay, now I'll get this other one apart. Okay, this is the back side, so this is the left side, and I got the nut off. This has a little piece for a strap too. Okay, I got the back off, and I'm gonna put this bolt back in so I can know how this goes together. Okay, so this now I can just slip this off here, and we got ourselves a pattern. So I'll show you the material we're gonna use. If you notice, the top of the bag has a little bit of bow to the back, so I gotta remember to get that on right. I wanted to show you my organized thing too. I got this from Harbor Freight too, and it's just been real handy. I put my 100-piece bit set here, then I put my socket set there, and my screwdriver and stuff, and all this is for 1/4 inch, and it's just been real handy. I keep my silicone grease in here.
Here's something.
I've got a 1/4 inch ratcheting wrench, which fits the bits exactly in case they're on really tight. I can get some more leverage. Okay, I wanted to show you the replacement parts I got. So, by the way, I'm going to clean up this rust here and on the chair tubing with Wink, and believe it or not, they make this Wink stronger in the Midwest than they do on the East Coast. The same for Lime Away, because the water is harder in the Midwest, and I guess they just don't think they need it as strong out here. I had bought some Lime Away out in the East, and it never worked as good, and I read up on it. But anyway, what I've done, okay, these are the connectors that hold the arm to the chair. I'm just going to clean these up and prime them and paint them, get the rust off of the spacers there. And these are the new bolts. Okay, so I drilled out, this is the rivet that I drilled out, and they had these washers on there. So I got these flat stainless steel washers, and I'm hoping that they'll bend around the tubing with a hammer. And I had to go to a little bit bigger hole size. The size is a 6mm, and 6mm by 1 by 10, I think. And then the stainless steel nuts, and they're lock nuts. They're 6mm by 1.0. And I'm going to reverse the way, okay, so this sits up on the arm, and then the rivet went through this way, but I got a little bit longer bolt so I could put a nut on the end, and I'm gonna run the bolt in backwards and put the nut on this end. Otherwise, it may touch the material on the back of the chair. Okay, and this other larger bolt, I checked these, and they were like $2 a piece, so I'm not gonna buy them just yet. I'm gonna try to clean these up. They didn't seem to rust too bad, and I did get stainless steel bolts for these. Nuts, and they're an 8 by 1.25, and also a lock. This is the old one. And then for these, I'm gonna also try to just clean the rust off of everything, try to reuse these, and I just got new nuts here, stainless steel. They're the 6 by 1.0s, lock nuts. So we're doing 2 chairs, and so this is just enough for 1 chair. So when I went and bought the bolts, I just doubled up on everything. I still have some more maybe rivets I need to drill out, but I was just gonna do for now what I needed to take off to get the fabric on. Then I'll take another look at the chair later and maybe buy some more stainless steel hardware for it. So all this hardware for 2 chairs was about $15 at Pleasance Hardware. Okay, I just put some of this Wink in this bowl, And these parts didn't actually rust, they just picked up the rust from the bolts. Okay, these brackets seem to be rust proof. Heavy aluminum maybe, but I'm gonna prime them and paint them anyway, and I also paint these spacers just to get the discoloration off of them. For the longer ones, I put some in a shot glass. To work the best, the bolts need to be free of grease and grime. And you'll know this stuff is working because you'll smell a sulfuric smell. So the other ones I only had in this solution for about a minute. And I'll probably do the same with this. And once they come out, they're not going to be totally rust-free, but you can dry them with a hairdryer to get the moisture off, and then you can put some silicone grease on them. That'll keep them from rusting. Okay, I did take some sandpaper to these a little bit. I just had some 1200 grit laying around, but any grit should work. And while I'm at it, I'll probably paint the shoulders here on these. Put some silicone grease on the threads. Now on these spacers, I just took a paper towel and dipped it in the wink and then just rubbed this. And I may paint these too, I don't know. Now here's a trick I use. I just get a piece of cardboard, preferably something a little bigger than this, but this is all I had on hand. And for the larger bolts, I just push them in. I put a slit in with a knife, and then I push the bolts through the slit, and I leave a little bit of the thread up because you're not going to be using that thread. And then these other screws, they were the ones that hold the handle on underneath the handle. They are not stainless steel, so I'm going to just do a light prime and paint of those so they don't rust. I got very similar, the same size, they're not exact. There's 4 smaller ones that go into the frame to hold the material on, and then there's the bigger ones that go under the handle to screw the wood on. Okay, I just happen to have this Zinsser primer on hand, and it is okay to use on metal. There's also Rust-Oleum rusty metal primer you can use that's brownish colored. You can lightly sand the tops if you want to take the shine off, but for the most part, I'm just going to prime and paint. Now, you don't want to fill up that hole too much with paint or it'll change the size of it. So just make sure you go really light. Okay, I put a light coat of primer on there. I'll let it dry probably for about 10 minutes, and then I'll put the final coat on. Okay, I just happen to have this chrome paint, and so I'm going to use that. Any paint will do. Rust-Oleum brand is good since it's going to be outside. Black Rust-Oleum would be good, as long as it's an outdoor paint. Okay, I just put a light coat on them. I'll do the same with the other parts. I just primed these. I'm going to just leave them primed. I'm not going to put any paint on them. Okay, if you notice, I used the old rivet pins to hold this stuff in place sometimes. When I painted the other side of this, I had it on the rivet pin. I don't know how long this coating will last. I just put one coat over the primer, and I'm going to let this dry a good 2 or 3 days before I assemble it. Now, I did have to take a step bit. I got these from Harbor Freight. I used the one on the left, and I drilled this hole on this side right there a little bit bigger so I could get the new bolt in. I also drilled the holes with the step bit on the frame so the bigger bolt would fit nicely. Now on these white spacers, I just painted one side. I just got the worst side to paint it because they're really not going to show. This is the side I didn't paint. And this side I painted, even I didn't get it real good, but it's, again, it's not going to show. It's going up against the frame. The new stainless steel washer and bolt looks a little different than the painted part, but it should be okay. Now the new screws that I got for the handle, if you notice, they have the standard Phillips head, and they should be a little bit easier to work with than the old ones that had the square bit. Okay, these are the arms off the other chair, and we're just going to run them through a planer. If you're not fortunate enough to have a planer, sanding them or using a varnish remover on them might work. Then this edge, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the edge. Probably have to sand that. Okay, these are the boards after I planed them. As you can see, they've still got a lot of mold left on them. Now here's one that I sanded a little bit. So I'm using 80 grit and 100 grit. I'm going to sand the edges and try to get them a little cleaner. Okay, I'm using an orbital sander, and I've got a board here that I finished, and I started with 80 grit. That works pretty good, and then I rounded the edges slightly as best I could, and then I sanded with 220, and I was anxious to see what the color we picked out looked like, so I put, this is called Chesapeake. You can get it at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's Cabot, C-A-B-O-T stain. This is a semi-transparent stain, and what I've done is put it on the back of one of these handles and on part of the side just to see what it does with this mold that's on here. And it doesn't look too bad. It looks a little mottled. I think it's going to work. So I'm going to let this dry, and if we like it, we'll go ahead and do the rest of the boards. Okay, this is it. And that's what they mixed. Okay, I've got all these sanded now, and still a little bit of mold on them, but it's just so deep in the wood you can't get it out. So we'll wait and see if that's the color we're going with, and if so, we'll stain it. We're in the process of staining, and what we're doing is we brush it on thick and leave it for 2 minutes and then wipe it off. And this is the second brush on, just until we get it to where we like it. This is what we're using, but it's up. And we're using something called Slate. Okay, I got these hanging up. I put Deft on them. I put a screw in them, and just got them. It took a while to get them even. This is the back side, and this is the front side. The paint we used was semi-transparent. To get a dark color like this, that's kind of what you gotta use. We probably could have gone with a transparent paint, but then I'm not sure we could have gotten the blue-like color, like the ocean. But with the blue-like color, you can't see the green as much, but it's still pretty. So this is the first coat. I'll let it dry 46 hours and put on another coat, sand with 400 grit sandpaper in between, and I'll put at least 3 coats on, maybe 4. Once you get the rivet head off, on the other side, you can use an old rivet that you've already gotten out to pound this one out. Okay, once I got those rivets out on both sides and I moved this out of there, I do see that this metal is rusting, so I'm going to clean it up with Wink and figure out a way to seal it. Okay, I'm just taking off a few of these parts at a time so I don't get too confused, and I'm putting my bolts back in so I don't forget where they go. And anyway, I took these off. They got rust inside of them, so I'll clean that out with Wink too. Now, I experimented last night. I put some stain on this metal, and within 24 hours it did dry, and I sprayed it with clear sealant. So I don't know how long that'll hold up, but I'm going to try to do that on this whole piece. Just stain it with the same stain I used for the handles. And then I'll put a coat of spray clear Rust-Oleum enamel clear spray on it. I did want to tell you, after I put Wink on this rust, I had some 120 grit sandpaper laying around, so I sanded it with that, and then had some 400 grit and sanded it with that. It's not ideal, but I think it's gonna be okay. Okay, I'm not worried about getting both sides perfect because this is the part of the frame that holds the seat. As far as I can tell, it's symmetrical, so when I put it together, I'll just put the best looking side up. I even painted the silver ends here. Now, for the most part, everything I paint, I use a foam brush, and I try to only use the tip of it and then clean it off, put some goof off on it, and squeeze it dry with a paper towel and wash it with some soap, and generally I can reuse it. And sometimes if I'm going to use it right away, I'll wrap it in saran wrap. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, when you paint this metal, you got to use a very, very little bit of stain in your brush because it runs. And then I just keep painting it for a couple minutes, getting the runs until the runs stop. Now, I experimented last night on the handles here. They're plastic, and I put a little bit of stain in here, and it has dried. So, I mean, I may ruin this, but I'm going to try it. I am going to paint. I cleaned these, and I'm going to paint them with the stain. Very, very light. And clean these up and paint these. And then I'll spray it with the Rust-Oleum clear enamel. This is the clear enamel. It's automotive enamel gloss that I'll be spraying on that after it dries. Okay, I got those painted. On this bar, I just kept brushing it from time to time while it's drying, and I think I've got all the streaks. I checked the other side, and I think I've got all the runs out of it. So, it'll be interesting to see how this turns out. This has really been a can of worms. I never intended to do this much on it. One thing leads to another, but hopefully it's going to come together. I've started taking this chair apart a little bit, but just real careful not to do it too much so I can remember how the other one goes together. Okay, just a note here, while I was working on these, it's unbelievable what happened. The wind blew the beach towel into the can of stain, and I also dropped a little bit of stain the other day on some linen material in the house, but I got it out. Unbelievable. I mean, I used the goof off, put that all over the stain and around the edge, and then I blotted it with paper towels and then just washed it out. That was just a little tiny spot, but this beach towel, I mean, it had a spot about 3 by 5 inches or a little more. So I used the goof off, and I kept squeezing the fabric out, squeezing the goof off out, blotting with paper towels. I did that about 3 or 4 times and still wasn't out, so I went to the store and got this brake parts cleaner, and it's really good at getting oily stuff out. I sprayed the beach towel spot with that 3 or 4 times and squeezed it out, and now I got it in the wash, and it seems like it's coming clean. So FYI, Okay, I got one more plastic piece here. I might as well do. I'm going to drill the rivet out on this side and the other side over there, and try to take care of this piece. Okay, I got these off. I cleaned them up with Wink. Still a bit of rust left on them, and of course this rust did not come from these plastic parts. It just bled onto them because the bolts in there were steel. So I'll go ahead and stain these. Okay, so when I first put it on, sometimes it doesn't take, like it's an oily surface, but eventually it does take. So I did want to mention, I happen to have a lot of things around that help me do all this stuff, and it's a lot of added expense. So even if you just redid your beach chairs with material, that in itself would be good. You know, you just do what you can, and we happen to have a lot of extra outdoor fabric laying around because my cousin gets fabric for free from people, leftover fabric. She goes to the workrooms that do the design, like the pillows and drapes and stuff for her when she gets orders with her interior design business. Okay, once I got the rivets out of those, they were able to come off. See, and guess what? I got more rust to clean. Where'd it go? Right there. Now I am trying something. I went ahead and sprayed this metal with automotive clear enamel and seeing how that works. Okay, I'm starting to put this together, and it's really nice to have the regular Phillips head screws, but got this one ready to go. Okay, got that one on. Much easier to put those screws in when these are off. I didn't know they came off initially. Took the fabric off of the chair, and I'm using these pieces as a pattern. I'm just going to cut around it, leaving space for the seams. But this fabric did not have a print on it, the original, so they used another piece of this for to make it double-sided. Oh, I'm actually going to use another piece of fabric. Oh, I cut out the first part, and now I need a part for the, I'm going to double it to make it a little stronger. So I'm going to cut this second piece out. This is going to go on the back side, which you won't ever really see until the chair is folded up. So it really doesn't matter, but all of this is outdoor fabric, which hopefully is going to make it hold up a lot longer this time, because I don't think the original was outdoor fabric. So I'm getting ready to cut bias tape. I need a little bit for the circular things right here on the seat covers. And the way I do this is the bias means it's on the diagonal. So I make one cut on the diagonal, and then I go from there. And this is a wonderful outdoor fabric from Bertano. This umbrella fabric. I thought this would just be a fun fabric to use as bias strips on this. And I'm just going to make lines with a marker and then cut it. I think I'm going to make it like 1.5 inches. So, and I have this great little gizmo I just bought called a gypsy gripper that keeps it straight. Holds this down when you make your line. So
I do is just take a marker, and I'm marking it on the wrong side. And then I'll just cut them. I'll just cut which I may not have this. So I decided to use an orange marker because I couldn't see my black marker. So you just keep going like this. And I don't need a whole lot of this, so I'm just gonna make a couple strips. And I should be good, and then I'm just gonna cut them. And you sew these together a little differently as well. You have to be a little careful with these because when you cut these, they stretch. There's a give on the bias, and that's why you use it for circular edges. You can see it gives. So you don't want to try not to pull the fabric. This is probably the old-fashioned way. There's probably all kinds of gizmos out there that can do this a lot faster, but I've just always done it this way, so it's faster for me. I think I'll just go ahead and cut the rest of this. So when you sew bias strips together, you sew them together at right angles, and then you sew them, and the pieces have to be at a right angle, and then you sew them at a diagonal. So I'm just gonna do this, and I have to say I'm not very I'm not very specific, I guess is the best word to say. I mean, I just do it because, you know, there's a lot of things that have to happen, and, you know, it just... So you just keep sewing, and that's how it turns out. And so I actually am going to put cording in here, and I'm going to do that. So I think you guys saw that little square. I think it was probably maybe 20 by a square. So I'm kind of good at estimating, but you know, this is just an estimate. So that 20 by 20 square will give you, like, I'm trying to measure by yard, so kind of 1, 2, 3, 4. I try to be generous. 5, 6, 7, 8. So between 8 and 9 yards of bias tape, and that was a 20 by 20 square. Yeah. You don't need a lot for bias tape. So that's more than enough for what we're going to work with this project. Okay, so I cut the bias strips and now I'm putting the cording in there. This is the cording. It's 1/4 inch cording. And you just lay it in there. You lay it and then you just fold this over it and sew. And this back here, that's going to be your seam allowance when you sew it into wherever you're going to sew it. So cording is actually very simple. I mean, everybody thinks it's kind of difficult, but it's not really difficult.
Okay, back to these. I did put a clear coat on it. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but when you put a clear coat on it, it does make the silver go to kind of a gray. And just FYI, if you want the silver paint to be as silver as possible, you paint black on it first. Put a full coat of black down, and that helps your silver paint kind of be a mirrored paint. Okay, we've got the material done for one of the chairs, and my cousin Yvonne did a really, really nice job. She put piping on, and it looks really, really nice. So as you can see, I'm still waiting on the nuts, but we just were so excited to get it set up and try it out. I've looked online for more chairs like this. It's a real brand. But this particular chair has 7 settings on the backrest, and I couldn't find any but 5 and 3. You can see the one piece of aluminum that I painted with the stain. It barely shows. It's mostly covered by material. The material that was on the old ones, I guess it was outdoor fabric, but it was very, very cheap outdoor fabric. And this fabric that my cousin has used feels about 4 times as thick. She did double it up in the back, so she got about 3 different kinds of fabric on here. So one for the piping. But we're so happy with it. Excited to get the second one. Okay, this is the second chair, and I've got all the frame winked, sanded, winked again, and then brake fluid ready for paint. Okay, this should go a lot faster than the first chair. Okay, this is going much quicker. Got these all clear coated and got the stain on this. I couldn't find my other clear coat when I ran out, so I had to buy this. It's automotive paint though, clear. And then I got those all stained. So once these dry, I'll let these dry overnight, and then I'll put a clear coat on them and be able to put this together. Yvonne's almost got the material ready for the second chair, but this one is just holding up. It rained. It's holding up so far, so good. So, okay, just a couple more things. I found out a quick way to take care of these. This part here is what shows. That part shows on the seat, and the center of that bar is where the material goes. So that's why I painted it and set it down on the wood in the center up here. And that's going to be all I need to do. Last time I painted them, I had trouble kind of to know just how to sit it to dry. And I did the same thing here. The material will go in the middle. So I got it sitting on wood there to dry, and it won't matter if it messes it up a little bit. The same up here. Material goes in the middle. That way my ends don't get all messed up like they did last time. Also, I painted the inside of these washers. If you have metal, I just read that if you have metal and aluminum touching, that it can deteriorate, especially in saltwater air. So I did that. And one other thing, these little guys I forgot to paint. I got them, and I tried something. I put brake cleaner on them before I painted them, and that seemed to make the stain take quite a bit better. And of course I brake cleaned all these tubing on this second chair too, which I hadn't done in the first chair, but that'll help your paint to stick. And then I've got these two over here. And this is kind of a nice design. These things twist. That's what helps you fold your chair. So after these dry and they get clear coated, I'll put a little bit of silicone in between there. Okay, I'm starting to finish the assembly on the first chair, and this bolt I did notice it is interacting just a tiny bit with some residual rust that's inside this tubing from the old hardware, and so I put a little bit of silicone grease on the whole thing. And now remember, these are pivot joints, and so you don't want to use a whole lot of strength tightening in them. I just would snug them up good. This is a nylon lock washer, so just snug them up a little bit, and then just make sure that it pivots still when you shut the chair up. I did decide to put the head of the bolt on the inside because when you lean on the chair, I didn't want that material rubbing against this bolt here. Now right here is, right down here is where this went, but we left them off because Yvonne is going to make a new strap to put on there once she gets a strap made. I think she's going to buy some webbing or something. Once she gets that made, I'll take this pin out and put that back in there. That's on both sides. Okay, I'm still painting the parts for the second chair, and I wanted to mention on these bolts, I never did buy new ones, and so I'm painting them, but I decided to paint practically the whole thread of them using that paint. Once they dry, I'll put clear coat on them. Okay, now back to this chair. This long bolt, it's really left pretty loose. Again, a lot of this pivots, and you don't want to tighten it too tight or you'll smash the tubing. But basically, it's about 2 turns off. Once you get it snugged up, I backed it off. I think that's the way the original was. Now this one I tightened a little bit tighter. I don't really like this bolt coming out and hitting that fabric so much, so I'll probably turn that around. Put the head of this over here. One thing I've noticed is this duplicolor clear paint does seem to give a much better finish. Cost about $5 more a can. It just seems to give a much clearer finish. I don't know if it's just me or what, but it seems a lot more see-through too, a lot clearer. Okay, I was wrong about this. I thought this was aluminum, but the magnet sticks to it. So they're steel. I mean, it's okay, but that's actually good. The stainless steel won't react with it then. But I thought for sure that was aluminum. So because those are steel, water can get inside of that tubing and can rust. So these chairs will not be totally rust proof. Okay, I'm testing this front bar, and it is not magnetic. I mean, it's not hooking to the magnet, so that front bar is aluminum. But I've tested everything else. Now that back one is aluminum too. But this other stuff, that sticks. That sticks. Oh, wow, that's interesting. Now this bolt, you see on the left, it can only be 1 1/4 inches, because when you fold the chair up, if it's any longer, you know, it's going to touch. So that's one good thing about rivets. You don't have to worry about that. But I don't have a rivet gun, and I didn't want to mess with rivets. But you can buy aluminum rivets and a rivet gun. Now, one problem I'm having here is that I think these bolts are getting in the way of this handle. I'm going to take this top one out and see if the handle falls. No, it doesn't fall. So I should be able to just put a nut on this then. Okay, I am going to make these come in from the inside so nobody snags their clothes on them. So I'll have to switch these. Okay, this is the last bolt to tighten up, and you can see those little tiny white washers I put in between. That was just to make it so this part here didn't rub against the metal. So all but this 1 1/4 inch long screw, this takes 1 3/4 inch long screws, except for these long bolts. These short ones I needed, I just cut them down on a grinder. You can use a Dremel tool too if you want, or just buy the 1 1/4 inch long. I liked to just use all the long ones because it's cheaper to buy them by the pack at Amazon. Okay, I did use 1.5 inches for that one too. Okay, my problem is this was binding a lot, not quite as bad, and this one was real loose. And so what I did, first of all, I took my step bit and I drilled the hole on both sides of this tubing 1 step bigger. That helped this tilt a little bit. The problem is this is tilted the wrong way, and it binds and catches on one side. Okay, the other thing I did, I took out my washers here. I had some washers in between here, and I thought that was a good idea, but I think it was causing problems. And then the biggest thing that helped, I took these screws out and I bent this handle, bent this piece of metal, this L part of it, up a little bit. That helped the handle get tilted the right way and got it so it's pretty good. You can leave it attached to the bottom nut. Just when you take the 2 screws out, you should be able to take a pliers and just gently bend it up a little bit, pry it up a little. But the nuts came in. I finally got one of these put together. This is the first one. Got everything tightened up, and I did have enough room on this particular one. No, okay, not this one. But I did get, did I get that tight? Okay, I haven't tightened that yet. That one down there. I was gonna put a washer in between there because I can already see marks. Can't see them good with this on here, but this aluminum was reacting with this stainless steel. Of course, I've clear coated them both, so that should help, but I'm still going to put a washer between the two. Okay, there you can see the reaction. It's not too bad, but I think a washer will help it from getting worse in case my clear coat wears off. Now, if you want, I did it on the second chair. You can put a plastic washer here too, a nylon washer, and you can also put one between these two pieces of metal if your bolt's long enough. So what I did was, can't do it on this one because I already cut this one to size, but I put all the washers on and the nut on, and then I cut the bolt. Now, another problem I had a bunch of these little clear nylon washers, but the center wasn't large enough for the screws, so I just put this on a little piece of 2x4, and I drilled it out with a step bit. Okay, it doesn't look like it's offsetting it much. Might have been good to use 2 of those, but... Okay, another problem I had when we're trying to put the fabric on these poles, it was getting stuck because there was a big burr here. And I've figured out that I could take the step bit, and I just drilled a little bit in there to help smooth it off, and then I rounded it out like this. So I'm going to do one for you. Okay, that worked real good. It just, the bit works kind of like sandpaper. So, hope that helps somebody out. Okay, this is the back of the chair. There was a screw going through the fabric into the bar, but we didn't want to put a hole in the material, so we're not putting those screws back in. And we finally finished the chairs. So we've got it. We're finally able to enjoy this. And there's the world seamstress. Hopefully one day we will get to the beach. Do you have anything to say about these chairs?
They just turned out awesome and amazing. Jackie did such a great job on the body, and I love the fabric.
Thanks for watching. This is the back of the second one.
I just love that this is outdoor fabric. This actually has 4 different fabrics, and I love them all together.